Dear friends, assessing the summits that have been taking place over this couple of days, the EU, the NATO and G7 summit, many are saying that maybe besides the major calls again to Russian Federation to immediately withdraw troops from Ukraine, to stop the aggression against Ukraine, to return to respect of the international law and human rights, they did not deliver on too many results that were so much expected and hoped for by specifically Ukrainian society. Many might say that their major results were establishment of the trust fund for Ukraine, Solidarity Trust Fund for Ukraine, confirmation of the open door policy of NATO and continuation of the work Secretary General Stoltenberg will be further doing as the head of the alliance, and maybe also confirmation of the Versailles Declaration about Europeanness of Ukraine and about basically call for its faster EU membership. But I would disagree with this. I think we are underestimating these summits. First and foremost, from my perspective, these summits were totally different from what we have seen before and what we are used to. Those were not the summits where major decisions have been long before pre-agreed, that the leaders would just come into the meeting and would confirm those decisions. These summits were much more about discussion, about finding common ground, about finding common understanding in order to make additional pressure on Russian Federation and think of the ways how to further assist Ukraine. Secondly, these summits also, specifically the NATO one and G7 summit, called on and kind of put some pressure on China and also India, because those are exactly the countries through which Putin and Putinist Russia would like to circumvent these sanctions, and specifically the sanctions with regard to energy resources. Also, thirdly, what's also very important, those summits have been about closing the loopholes in the sanctions that have been already unrolled and assessing the possibilities how to ensure that Russia is not avoiding the pain from this particular sanctions that have been pre-agreed. And I think, fourthly, what's also important, not only what has been happening during the summits and at the summits, but what is happening on the sidelines. And that also includes visit of President Biden to Poland. And that means that this visit also might mean that there will be further discussion on the specific assistance to Ukraine in terms of planes. That could be meetings, those could be meetings where additional discussion on this plan of Morawiecki with regard to peacekeeping force from NATO will be discussed. Also, discussions about possible energy union between NATO and European countries with regard to how to provide energy resources to Europe that would substitute the Russian ones for the nearest time. So all of this, considering all of this and appreciating highly all these results, obviously we Ukrainians can and have a right to actually say that this is still not enough. The strategy towards Russia of collective West, I think, is clear. It's about exhaustion of Russian Federation without direct involvement in the military actions against Russian Federation. But we have to understand that this strategy is a mid to long-term strategy. And if we're talking about 2 further winters and provision of energy resources from the US to Europe for 2 next winters, we do not know whether we Ukrainians do have those couple of next winters. So that's why we have to also understand that we have to kind of change the strategy in order to help Ukrainians to stop Putin here in Ukraine, because I will not be repeating the things that I think many in the West, in the Western elites do know, that basically the Moscow Federation has already started the Third World War, and it hasn't been started on the 24th of February with a war, new wave of war against Ukraine. It has started much earlier, back in with Munich speech of Putin in 2008, with his attack on Georgia, then with first attack on Ukraine in 2014, continued war over 8 years against Ukraine, and continues on now. But what I will repeat, that it's so much and put so much stress on this, that it is very important that Putin is stopped here in Ukraine, because otherwise his appetites will be growing and he will not stop on his own. So therefore that means that we Ukrainians need still more, and will be asking more from the West, and that means additional, comprehensive, coordinated sanctions against Russia, meaning all banking system of Russia being cut off SWIFT, being all the assets of Russian Federation and its oligarchs and its VIPs being frozen abroad, meaning no ships of Russian Federations coming to any port of the free world countries, meaning Russia blacklisted in FATF, meaning total trade embargo with Russian Federation. And I think all of this is possible. We also need more humanitarian aid, and I'm sure a lot of nations will engage into that. But most importantly, we need additional weaponry, and not only defensive weapons. We also need offensive weapons at this particular moment. We also need high-range air defense. We need airplanes. We need tanks. We need armored vehicles. We need protective gear. That is all in order to ensure that Russian Federation is kicked out from our land, and we as Ukrainians do have the right to survive and to choose our own path in the future. And one more I will repeat at the end, that my call to Western nations: be creative, react hybridly to what Russia is doing. Let's find new ways of how this type of military equipment can be provided to Ukraine, with involvement of third nations, with additional transactions. So with additional volunteers coming into Ukraine, helping us to learn quickly how to use some of that equipment that we do not know how to use as of this point, at this particular moment now. So help us to save you.